Apparently, I forgot to turn the lights on right before we started. Oops. Oops, 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 oops. How's everyone doing this fine Sunday afternoon? I see a lot of people in here, which is good. I'm very happy to see you. We are going to have a fun conversation this afternoon. But I see Kieran Ball. I see Bjorn Jorgensen. Hello, Grandpa Jorgensen. I see Jesse Hughes, the epic badger who's putting together some furniture. Brendan Haley, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. And if you're not haven't said anything in the chat, hello to you too. Thanks for being here. Kieran Ball caught me. He says Jim is flooding the market with live streams, taking over. Like, no. I just I got confirmation on my guest for tomorrow, and I said, well, I better get this out there. And then I had the idea what was going to be the stream for tomorrow if that guest fell through. When I said, well, we'll do it the week after. So I went ahead and made the title card for that and scheduled that out. And then I had two other ideas for streams, and one of which I scheduled out the third week. So it's ready to go. And then the fourth one being this one, because I wanted to do something today, just to get the brain going, basically. Get things moving, because I have not been particularly synapse heavy the last few days. My hat seems lopsided for some reason. I can't figure out why. But I got it fixed. It's all good. So here we are. That's what we're doing. Jesse says, just got over my second target to even more of those new Motu figures, different from last night. Jesse shared a picture with me of the next wave of Motu Origins figures that have already hit market. Wave 7, I believe it is. So Jitsu and who else was there? Buzz Off, and then he also saw a Fisto there. Those are not yet super easy to come by. The Fisto has been around for a while, but kind of rough to find. So he kind of found a little treasure trove there, which is pretty cool. Apparently he saw some different figures today, which is really cool. Really cool. The question that we're asking today: can any toy be considered a Grail piece? And at the end of the day, I think Kieran nailed it on the head. We said yes. Next question, of course. But what does that mean? I think everyone has a different idea of what a Grail piece is in a collection, whether it be toys or otherwise. Sometimes it can be something that you had as a kid that you really, really are after. The kind of, maybe it's the spark of why you wanted to start collecting so you can get to that place and get that thing. Sometimes it's something that is just plain super rare. Sometimes it's somewhere in the middle where it's not the rarest thing in the world, but it's special to you for some reason. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can manifest the idea of what we call a Grail piece, right? So I want to talk about what that means to you. Like I have a couple Grail pieces, some of which I already have, which is interesting to me. Like the Hall of Justice, for example, was kind of the pinnacle of what I originally wanted when I started collecting vintage again. I gotta have this. And within a month, I had one, and I didn't overpay or anything, which was crazy. And then you start going after like the nitpicky, like there's a few pieces that were missing and stuff. Sometimes there's something you had that, again, not super rare, but you want to get one. Spider-Man from the Amigo line, and I have one thanks to Jim Salzberg. And keeping in mind that there's a subject coming up, which is a collection ever really finished? Now, the short answer on that is probably not. But I think that just like the collection keeps moving forward, what constitutes a Grail piece will change over time as you amass a collection. I think there's always going to be that measure. And I often wonder if there are things that we go after that just to keep the fire going, I guess. And that I wonder if like the rest of our collecting practices somehow supplement that every time we push a different grail out there kind of thing. I don't know. I'd like your thoughts on where your head is at with that. So Sorceress and Stratos just stuck. Nice. Stratos, shirtless Stratos, as I call him. I've said it's flooding UK eBay, going for $40 a piece. JJ says it's tough when you have all the items in a set, but a part is missing. That part's your grail. I would have to buy a hard to find toy, a duplicate, just to get that one piece. Yeah, that can honestly be a lot of what it runs down to. My personal grail is also my white whale versus Luke's Landspeeder Lego set. Okay. Yeah, Lego sets are weird. They go in and out of circulation. It's really weird to me that they do that in that way. I don't like it. Psycho Cinematics, how you doing? Says, ooh, nifty verbiage. I tend to call them white whales myself. There you go. Like so we're saying because with any kind of collecting, whether it's physical media for games and movies, toys, comic books, whatever you collect. I think a lot of the times when you say, okay, I'm collecting now. Here's a list of things I really want to get. Hopefully you end up with those things. And a lot of times, at least in my experience, I tend to end up with them sooner than I ever thought. That's happened to be a bunch. And I've been very lucky in that regard. And I kind of what I'm looking for is Grail pieces necessarily now versus when I first started collecting is going to be a lot different. Like it might be a smaller scale thing, like what Jesse is saying. And Kieran Ball says there are pieces of that everyone considers a Grail. Then there are pieces that an individual considers a Grail. True. Grail piece for you, Mint Tex Dawson figure from Lone for Injured Toy Line. There you go. And that's a pretty niche collector's item. Very niche. If you're not into the Lone Ranger, like, why would you get it? But I totally get that. Psycho Cinematic says, though the Grail was attached to youth restorative properties, which really fits the nostalgia stuff, so your term's right on. Yeah. And I think that most people in the toy community, and certainly to a certain degree in the game collecting community, like we've used that term for a while. I certainly didn't coin it. But that kind of is, I think, a good point to bring up, that a Grail piece, a sought after quest item, if you will, is going to make you give you energy when you're, oh, I have this now, and what am I going to do? Kind of thing. I find it really interesting. I think everybody's got something that they want to have that will transport them to a certain place, and it does, but then you just have it, right? You just have it. And maybe every time you go by it or you touch it or you use it or whatever, it brings you a sliver of that joy. But I often find that it's so prevalent in so many collectors' minds is that the chase almost invariably is better than the hunt, so to speak. So Chicken Man says, and welcome to the channel. Says, I got the original Luke Landspeeder years ago on a whim. It's not cheap now though, but the later Landspeeder is much better design. Exactly. I think a lot of time that comes into play too, where if we're talking toys, A lot of times, a less Grail eligible item uh, is a more desirable collector's piece because it's more usable or more accurate or what have you. But having the original or something that is nostalgic to your specific childhood, something you had, you still want that sort of a thing. Uh, like I know that there's certainly people out there that want an original Castle Grayskull, which are not difficult to find and they're not horribly difficult to complete, just cost a little bit of money, versus the Origins one. Um, because I just prefer the look of it or whatever. But maybe they also would get an Origins one just for use of display and play and stuff like that. Everyone's different. Jordan Organ said the first Luke Land Speeder Lego set was the first Lego set I ever had. There you go. There you go. Just he says the best whale is the one found at a quarter of the price because the seller just clearing out a lot, not from a collector. There you go. It really can be something where when you find something and the circumstances themselves tell a story. It's pretty cool. That's kind of like how I got my Hall of Justice. I got it from an eBay seller who was the original owner, really took good care of their stuff. We've cultivated a friendship ever since. So it's not just having the Hall of Justice, but now I have this friend that like I would never have had I not gone after that particular listing and stuff like that. So it's I find that when we have a collection, most of the time there is some story or something to be said about why that item is in your collection, in your possession. And typically speaking, if you can't succinctly say why you have something, then you probably shouldn't have it, right? So I think when we talk about grails and white whales, when you go after that universally considered grail item that you know is hard to find and you're just after it just to say you have it, I mean, power to you, right? But if you can't provide me with a reason behind having it, it's like, well, why have it other than just to brag and gloat? And I personally don't feel that that's a good reason to have anything in your collection. You should have it because it has value inherent to you, not to an outsider. Though, there's crossover there, of course. Uh, but there are certainly people out there with more money than brains or heart that will go up and snap up all the rare stuff, all the grail stuff, just to say they have it all in one place, right? Um, I don't understand that personally. I cannot empathize with that. I understand how one might get there, um, but I can't put myself in that person's shoes and say, "Well, I have all this stuff." Like I don't. I'm proud of my collection, obviously, but it's not something that I ascribe to of like as a status symbol by any stretch. I want to share what I have with people. I want to talk about it. I want to enjoy these things. Whether it's pulling a movie off the shelf or looking at the artwork on a vinyl sleeve or a CD or displaying a toy, playing with a toy, um, wearing a hat, wearing a shirt, because those are collector's items too. You know, um, whatever the case may be. My buddy Rob from Order 42 is going to be on tomorrow. Like, in addition to um, collecting different editions of the Tolkien books, he also has like Star Wars Lego stuff that he's collected. He collects film as well, but he also has a collection of vape paraphernalia. He doesn't just have it to have it, like he just uses different stuff and he tinkers a lot. But it's a collection in its own right, and I feel like anything that any items we surround ourselves with um, has that potential to be someone else's kind of a grail thing. Um, Bjorn Jorgensen says searching for a grail can be a slippery slope sometimes. You have to ask yourself, is the grail for me because I want it or because other people want it? Exactly. Which is going back to what I was saying earlier about the guys that just go out to get rare stuff to get rare stuff. I think that the person that buys graded items, whether it be a game or a toy, I think those are the ones that are going after it for the perceived value of others. Um, and I think that's a shame. I mean, it's going to happen, right? It's the same thing with anything else, sports memorabilia, movie memorabilia, what have you. Some folks just like having rare stuff to say they have rare stuff. Um, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. There really isn't. It's disappointing in as much as if you're not going to get as much joy as the next guy who would have or gal who would have liked it. It's a shame that you don't appreciate it the same way we would, but if you appreciate it, you appreciate it. And they're preserving it, so it's like, can I really get mad at them for that? Not really. Um, but it's certainly something to explore for sure. You know, I find sometimes that the opposite ends up being true. Like, for example, uh, and I may have told this story before, and if I have, I apologize. But the original George Romero Dawn of the Dead, the first time it got pressed on Blu-ray, which would have been 2008. I bought it as soon as it came out. I bought it at a deep discount. We have a brick and mortar deep discount store where I was living at the time. Walked in, grabbed it off the shelf, walked out. $8, no big deal. Budget, great deal. And this would have been, 10 years later. Um, I decide to see if there's another edition of that Blu-ray that's come out since with more special features or whatever. Just because it's a long time and the Blu-ray market had increased and stuff like that. Well, I come to find out that by that point, that particular film was out of print on Blu-ray. You couldn't get it for love nor money, and that particular edition that I had was worth like $200. I'm like, what? Why? Do people want it that bad? And it was going on eBay. Buy it nows were going for like 150 to 200 because it was just that hard to come by. People were hanging on to it, right? Um, I of course I didn't buy the film for that purpose. I bought it to watch the movie, and then by virtue of just the market, it shot up in value. Now it's gone back down now in some degree because you can get it on Blu-ray again. But if you're after that particular pressing, like it's still going to cost you an arm and a leg. Chicken Man says I joined eBay in August 1999. The bargains. Wish I could go back to those times. Wish I would have bought a lot more. Got lots of grails for pennies on the pound. Yep, that's that's how it is. It's the same way with yard sales and all sorts of stuff. Like there's definitely stuff that I've passed up over the years that I wish I hadn't. But at the end of the day, it's something where you could only do what you do. You can't beat yourself up over that stuff. But I get where you're coming from for sure. Boba Hicks says, "Hello, everyone." Well, hello to you too, Boba Hicks. It's good to see you. Good to see you. So Bjorn Jorgensen says that reminds me of the Dexter's Lab Complete Series DVD set. People are asking a bunch of money for it, though I believe it may be region locked. That's easily surpassed with computers now. Kieran Ball says, in my youth, I often became obsessed with keeping up with the Joneses in regard to my collecting, but now I just collect for myself. That's what you want to do. That's the only way to do it, as far as I'm concerned. Scott Hughes says, hello to you too. Coming back to Kieran's point, um, I don't hold my collection up next to anyone else's. Like, I don't necessarily covet other people's collections because they're going to be uh, much more. Well, they're going to have their own viewpoint on what's important versus what isn't, and you know, whether it's like a Michael French or a Tony Roberts or Dave from Toy Play, they all have extremely different philosophies on collecting, and some of them have a more narrow focus, some have a very wide focus. Like Dave has, over a dozen vintage Skeletors for Masters of the Universe. I don't, I don't get that. Aside from the fact he likes to fix toys and stuff, I don't understand why people do that. For the most part, troop building to a certain degree, I can see, but to have that many of that figure that aren't in some way different, I don't fully understand why one would do that. Nor do I begrudge it. Like that's Dave. He wants to have a bunch of Skeletors. Let him. But I don't covet his collection in that way because it's like, plus he has interests that I don't. Um, Same with Tony. Same with Michael. Like there's corners of each of their collections where I'm like, oh dang, that's cool. But I would not want to be saddled with a collection the size of Tony's or Michael's. It's just a lot to deal with. Like what I have now is a lot. Um, and I have a feeling that, over the years it'll get up there, like nowhere near as big as say Michael's, but it'll get up there, I'm sure. And I'm okay with that, but I don't know that I'd ever be in a place where I would want to acquire an entire collection of someone's. Like, and I don't just mean like one lot or something like that. I'm talking like just a whole room of stuff. They're like, here, you can have this for whatever amount of money. Because I feel like at that point you are then sorting through someone else's grails, and it would like not feel as genuine for whatever reason. Like that's just me. So keeping up with what other people um, ascribe to in terms of desirability just isn't for me either. Psycho Cinematic says, I'd agree that anything can be a grail. Even food shopping sometimes and items that should be there that isn't becomes a quest item increasingly so to manage to get it. You're not wrong. But then you're not going to take a block of cheese and put it on your shelf and get a special stand for it and be like, behold the block of cheese. Like it doesn't quite work that way, but I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. Bjorn Jorgensen says, not everyone's collections are the same, and the reason they collect are different as well. Exactly. And as it should be. Scott Hughes says, buying in lots and whole collections removes the thrill of the hunt. I think to a certain degree, sure. Um, but I will say that when it comes to buying lots, sometimes that's the only way to get certain things, right? Uh, okay, for an example, if there's a playset that you're after and you need a couple pieces from that to help Frankenstein yours into something else, but it comes with a bunch of figures you already have, it might justify the cost of getting that lot so that you can turn around, cannibalize the stuff you need, put a few other things you don't need in the lot, sell it at a different lot at a lower price to one, recoup some of your costs for this, but also to give somebody a good deal. You know what I mean? So, you know, maybe it's not as thrilling to do things that way, but it does present an opportunity to perhaps get someone else something that they do need. So that's something that I've been exploring more and more as far as like when things start to whittle down, and especially with like superpowers, for example. There's very few things that I need in the first two series in terms of like an accessory here or a thing there or something like that. It's just very, very few. And depending upon the lots that are available, some of those parts might be something I can only get in a big bulk purchase like that. And I like the idea of using that as an opportunity to help somebody else out in a long run kind of a situation. I really dig that. Chicken Man says, sometimes it's luck. I've gotten stuff at car boot sales where I've had to buy a box of stuff for £10 to get one item worth £50. Well, that's par for the course for sure. I think we've all had something like that happen to us. Jordan Organ says, buying lots for certain pieces, like getting a playset figure for a certain accessory. Yeah, it happens all the time. Karen Ball says, I have always collected multiples of each piece, not the army build, but to have them mint in box and also to display. I totally understand that. Um, I don't condone it for everyone because that's just a lot of space, but I completely understand the desire to do that. Scotty says, yeah, that's different. What I was actually referring to is just to buy an entire superpowers complete collection in one lot. Yeah, I would never do that. But I get where you're coming from. Now, on the other hand, when I first started collecting superpowers, if someone said, for 200 bucks, here's everything. Yes, I would have 100% done that. 100%, no regrets at all. Sometimes it's like, yeah, it kind of kills the thrill, but there's a lesser thrill of just knowing you have this thing because you got to figure for at least 10 years, at least 10 years, you know, every couple months, every couple weeks, in some cases, I'm like, man, I wish I still had those things, man. But certainly for the better part of 30 years, it would always come up at some point. I would just think about it, go, man, those are cool, man. Um, so what used to be like a little bit of a pain point for not having them now becomes well, I have that. That's pretty cool. I don't have to ever worry about that again. Kind of neat. So I get where you're coming from, and I agree. But if I were starting out and I just came across them at a yard sale in a big bucket, like that wouldn't have hurt my feelings at all. So it always kind of does a thing. Bjorn Jorgensen says, then some people accuse you of being a scalper if you're buying to everything. I mean, to a certain degree. Chicken Man says, I give the spare stuff to my boy to play with. Don't throw anything away. He loves it and keeps him away from my stuff. That's fair. That's fair. Um, my only child is grown, and my girlfriend's daughter is also grown. So we don't really have that kind of a thing. Um, but I can definitely understand that for sure. I don't believe in throwing anything in the garbage, especially if it's vintage. There's no reason for that at all. Um, because even if it's broken, someone might need it. So if I don't know anyone that needs it, I can sell it or hang on to it or some combination thereof for things to work out well. Jim Salzberg, what's up, buddy? He says, I just listed the Dreadnought Air Assault Fang on eBay. It was a long haul getting it back in the day, but eventually everything goes down the pike. It's true. It kind of goes. Um, you can't take everything with you, for lack of a better term. You can't take everything with you, and I feel like when you get a lot of stuff, when you amass a big collection of anything, you need to whittle it down to stuff that is really, 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 really special to you. And there's no reason you shouldn't make a buck while you're doing it, especially with as much bucks go into it in the first place. And sold a mint with box Tower of Doom. Is that the Secret Wars one? Those get pretty pricey. Pretty awesome. I'm assuming it's that. Oh. See, and that's Kieran Ball being a little cheeky in a good way. Saying, well, UK stores that I use don't care as long as I get the money, which means that from a retail perspective, it doesn't matter. Just buy them up. It's fine. And he doesn't care what other collectors think. I don't care what other collectors think. I've got a couple doubles, not many, but I have some. Um, and it's just a question of what am I going to do with them? You know what I mean? James Salzberg, yes, but it only went for $50. I would have paid $50 for a tower. I don't even care about Secret Wars, but But I would gladly have paid $50 for that. But Action Force and Christmas and all this stuff. There's a show coming up in a couple weeks where it talks about budget because I'm just like, the hell do you do? Um, because the collector market doesn't stop. This doesn't stop for Christmas, damn it. It's kind of crazy to think about those things. He said, "Yeah, me too. I would have paid $50 for one." So I didn't pay that much for it then. I get it. Like I'm not into Secret Wars. I was as a kid. Like as a kid, I had this dream of coming across all the Secret Wars stuff I didn't have on clearance. It was something I was after, actively after. But they just had shit distribution. You couldn't find anything. Um, I had Doc Ock, I had Doctor Doom, I had Captain America and Spider Man. Could never find an Iron Man. Couldn't find the cycles. Couldn't find the tower. You just couldn't see that stuff. You just for whatever reason, where I was at that time, couldn't get it for whatever reason. And I just never came across it, and I just meh. And now I look at the stuff, I'm like, because it's not the easiest stuff to come by in good condition. Um, and I look at the Secret War stuff and I go, man, that would be really cool to have because of the childhood connection, but I don't have a particular attachment to it at the same time. Like I have one and I don't. Like I don't look at the designs of those toys and go, "Ooh, those are really good." It's strictly a wanting to impress 8-year-old me in some way. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Scott Hughes says, "Action Force, Christmas, Star Wars, Power of the Force 2 new in boxes." La 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 la. Right. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Go to Tron says a number of grails that I sold off years ago would curl your hair and or make you sick. No more grails for you. Yeah, I get it, Carl. I get it, dude. It's one of those things. Mr. Salzberg says getting Iceman, Electro, and other Europeans got pricey back then. Oh, I bet. I bet. Karen Ball says, thing is, if I find out a friend needs a piece and I have multiples of, I'll happily pass it on to them because that's how you roll. There you go. Yeah, the Secret War stuff's kind of lame. It is. It is. They're not great figures and they're not great everything. I've looked at them and it's like relative to their cost. I'm like, mm-mm. But if I could get all of them for like $50 to $100, like, yeah, no brainer. Sure. Great. Put them off to the side. Cool. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? But it's just not desirable to me. They're Grail adjacent for a lot of people, I think. Or you look at stuff like Brave Star. I had a bunch of Brave Star stuff as a kid. I got in on it late, and because it was cheap, it was something new that we could get that was relatively inexpensive because it was going on clearance because it wasn't selling well, and I got a bunch of stuff. I had the Stagecoach, I had Tex Hex and Brave Star and the Handlebar, the bartender guy. Um, I had the little walker thing, the Death Walker that Tex Hex had. I had the horse robot guy. I had a bunch of stuff. Didn't have the fort. Didn't have any of the laser stuff, but I had pretty sizable chunk of stuff from that collection. Um, I played with them. They're great. It was cool. But to go back and try to get them now, fucking forget it. I never saw the cartoon. I didn't have any investment in the property beyond the toys just being really cool. Um, but for the amount of money they're going for now, forget it. Forget it. It's stupid. Um, because the handful of people out there that really like Bravestar hang on to it, and it was hard to find to begin with. Back in the day, so you can combine those things together, and it's like, well, good luck finding them. So I don't mess with it. Ian Sweeney says, "Evening all. Sorry for being late. You're not late. This was a spontaneous stream. You arrived exactly when you meant to. Totally fine. 100% absolutely fine. Um, but like I remember, Mr. Clark Kent here always being a bit of an anomaly in the line. And as a kid, I wasn't like super into the idea of mailing away for him. I could have. Um, but now as a collector, it's like, well, I really want to have them, so I can say I have them. I don't know that I'd ever like get a phone booth kind of a thing going or whatever. I might, but I'm just really happy to have them. But it's not because I have an attachment, childhood attachment to Clark Kent or the figure. I just love the idea of having a complete series too. You know, and he's one of the rarer ones, rare adjacent, I guess. Chicken Man says I used to love the Centurions, but saw those prices. Agreed. I had a bunch of them. I had pretty much all of them back in the day, and I loved playing with them, except for the fact that they broke really easily. But I loved all the different armor sets and things that you could do, and uh, just really, really, really cool stuff overall. Just fun toy. It was a little bit on the uh, fragile side, and the prices now are just ridiculous. There's no way. Jim Salzberg says Spiral Zone, same thing. Exactly. It's the same as like Brave Star and stuff, where it's like it wasn't easy to find in the first place. It never caught on. Um, the toys looked cool, but there was nothing to latch onto. Like I saw the cartoon maybe like once. Um, you know, the thing. And Kieran Ball says, sorry to everyone, but going to jump over the 2 cents toys. No problem. No worries. I appreciate you being here all the same. Go tell Sal I said hi. Appreciate you. Um, but there's a ton of toy lines like that where they come out and it feels like they immediately went on clearance, and then you got like maybe one or two or a handful of them, and then you're like, you know what? I wonder about blah 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 blah. And you look it up, and it's like, how much? Like air raiders are kind of like that too. Like for the most part, they're decent prices. I had a ton of them as a kid. Um, but the prices on those vary so wildly. Um, but they're a really obscure kind of thing. Ian Sweeney says, "I know there are modern collectors figures for Battle of the Planets. Was there an old toy line? I honestly don't know. Let me take a look, see what I can find while we're here because reasons." Battle Planets. All right. A good person to ask would be Jim Largo. I know he's a fan of this stuff. Let me see if I can find. There were toys. Yes, by Migo. Okay. There's no old toys in the USA for that. There's some Migo stuff and just rack toys in the comic. Well, there you go. So now we know. Battle of the Planets had a couple things, but nothing too full scale. There you go. Now you know half the battle. GI Joe. All good. All good. All fine. Um, but there's a ton of stuff out there. Like there's this one um, version of Spider-Man. They had a Captain America as well. I had both of these, and it was they were both like solid plastic, about 12 inches. Scott Hughes and I have talked about these before, and like the Spider-Man, there was like a wire that came out of his hand, and you put a little hook on something, and you wound him up, or you turned him on, he went up the web, and then Captain America just stood there, and his shield would spin, and it glowed in the dark for no reason. That was the gimmick. It was like this. Yeah, Remco Energize, exactly. Yep. And as a kid, I was like, ooh. But even as a kid, like, why can't I get something? Why can't I get a decent action figure? And the Secret Wars stuff comes out. Of course, the first two ones I get are Captain America and Spider Man. And Spider Man wasn't horrible, but there was like, there's nothing to him, right? And like Spider Man couldn't pose in Spider Man kind of poses. He didn't have a web or anything. He has a stupid ass shield. I'm like, why? What's the deal with the lenticular shield? What's the thing? What are we doing here? What's the point? And no one could really tell me. It was just weird. It was just weird. Bjorn says, not really a Grail. My two favorite Lego figures are original Han and Chewbacca. There you go. James Helfer said, I drooled over the ads for Power Lords, but saw them in person and was like, nope. Yeah, I had a bunch of the Power Lords stuff. I know what you're talking about. Um, I had like 4 or 5 of them. And I could not tell you why I had them. I could not even begin to tell you. Like they were just kind of weird toys. Um, yeah, I can see them right here in front of me. They're kind of nuts. Let me see if I can show you guys. You get the window up here for you. Not that. Dang it. Why is eBay on the screen at all? There we go. Okay, cool. But yeah, it's really weird. Oh, that's why. Okay. But that guy's just weird looking. Like he just turns into this weird alien thing. I guess that's his like true form or whatever. There are some crazy toys that are out there from that line. They're kind of nuts. Um, Atom Power. Let's see here. Power Lords toys. Let's do that. There we go. Yep. See, I had this guy. Had him. I guess as I recall, he spun around or something like that. And they have, I guess, new ones coming out apparently, which is like, why? Who exactly asked for these? Like, I just kind of was given one or two as a kid, and it was like cool, I guess. Like people were really out of touch with some, when they were buying me gifts as a kid. Like I would get one of these guys, and I'm like, okay, and like I just didn't care. Like I never understood the appeal of them. He was just kind of sitting there. It was whatever. What can you do? What can you do? Oh, they were crap, chicken man. Like there was no play value in them at all. Like they weren't meh. They were just kind of there. Um, Coach Toronto says Four Horsemen redid Power Lords years ago. Came and went quickly. I imagine. I imagine. Bum, bum, bum. Scott Hughes says my Grail had to be the big 12-inch or so Alien from 1979 was too scary for kids. Yeah. That was a thing. There was a lot of toy lines at the time, um, where Ken was like, "All right, we can do something with Alien," and they tried, and they're like, "Oh, like that would be a cool thing to have for sure." Um, I saw that Bjorn Mattel's doing an Andre the Giant Bigfoot figure. Is it part of the Master of the WWE line or no? I know they did it Andre the Giant in that line already. Um, but I don't know. I just think it's interesting to do that. But then if you don't have the context of the $6 million man, like it kind of seems pointless at the same time. Um, like people are just going after licenses. Like they probably had to pay for the license again from his estate, and now they're trying to put out as much Andre stuff as they can to justify the cost, which I get. Like they're totally allowed to do that. Um, but I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. Um, but there's like people. There are things that even that are considered rare and expensive, rare figures. Um, that are also people's Grail pieces that I have zero interest in. Zero interest in. Like I get it. I'm just like, who care? Like I don't care about any of the $6 million man stuff at all. I would watch the show as a kid. I wasn't hooked on it or anything. Uh, like the 3 3/4 scale Star Trek stuff. Don't care about the Star Trek stuff at all. Had a bunch as a kid. Wasn't enthralled by them at the time. I just wasn't. Melvor says 79 Kenner Alien is one of your top ones right now. Also, okay. How you doing, Melvor? Good to see you, buddy. Bjorn Jorgensen says it's part of the Hollywood line of wrestlers based off their appearances in movies. Oh, okay. All right, I see what you're saying. I got you. I got you. Daniel Dory says, "All right, guys, how's things? Yeah, things are. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Bear in mind, also, folks, we do have the show, the regular Monday show tomorrow night. Going to have Rob from Order 42 on to talk about the plight of the person who's not a hardcore collector, but is a hardcore fan and falls somewhere in the middle of what can happen when you're in that place. And also, the guy has a ton of Star Wars Lego stuff. I remember walking into his house for the first time and going like, "Damn!" But he's not a hardcore toy collector or Lego collector. He just had certain pieces he wanted, he got them, and that was that. So I want to talk. It's kind of like, what's it like? Like, how does that feel? Like, how do you just not do that? Um, Ian Sweeney says, vintage Castle Grayskull, G1 Jetfire, the Zorro replica sword, chalk in the tip that you had as a kid. Top 3 Grail pieces. Fair enough. Those are pretty good pieces as they go. Although it wouldn't be too hard to customize a Grizzlor, I'm like, well, we need a Grizzlor first. Grizzlor needs to be announced. It needs to be announced first. Daniel says, "We all know my Grail, a certain cat lair." I did not know that actually, Daniel. I didn't know that. So you're after that Thundercats lair, huh? Thunder, 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 Thundercats. Wow. It's a tough one. A tough one to find. It was tough to find when it was brand new. You just didn't see it anywhere. That's something I know Melvor can attest to. I know Jim Salzberg can attest to. I'm sure Gojatron can attest to it. There was stuff that they would tell you, "Oh, this is available," and then you go and it's not there. It was almost like vehicles in place that certain ones just never materialized. Um, it was weird. Like I don't know if it was the same as like there were certain cartoons that you knew that they exist. The only reason I knew they existed is because I'd go to visit another state and they'd have it there, but I want to go home and I didn't have it because of syndication and stuff. Um, so I was even chasing after certain cartoon shows because I just wanted to see them. Like, I've never seen a single episode of Jason the Wheeled Warriors. Never saw it. Had almost the entire line of toys as a kid. Loved them. Loved them to death. Never saw the show. Not even a second of it. Aside from stuff on reviews, things like that. Yep. Never saw the indie truck. Yep. Bjorn says another big one of mine is I have a complete set of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. There's certainly enough toys out there that you could just pick the line you want and grab them. The Thundercat layer goes for at least 600 or 700 loose. Worth it, I guess. LJN did a good job with it. Yeah, it's just the core Power Rangers team. I get you. I get you. It's kind of like me with the turtles. Um, there's a few different versions of them out there, and I would be happy with four regular turtles. I think I'd be good there. Um, just to have them represented in the collection because they were a huge part of my adolescence. Loved the turtles. I still do, but I love the turtles. And although there are design options that fall right where I want them to, I don't like the companies putting a lot of that stuff out. So it's like, so I stick mainly with the Playmate stuff, and there's a 4-pack that you can still get. It's like a classics or something where they all have the red bandanas like in the comic, but they're also kind of similar between the comic and the cartoon in terms of their build, but they all have the red bandanas on. I like that a lot. Um, but then, like Bjorn's saying, he's got the four turtles, the reissued Playmates ones. He's fine with not getting any more turtles figures. Yeah, if I could get those four at retail price, like that'd be just as good. You know, um, again, just to be able to say I've got the turtles, and I might supplement that with like Splinter and April and Shredder and Rocksteady and Bebop, but that would be about as far as it would go. I wouldn't go too deep into it. Um, there's a few versions of the turtles. Let's put it lightly. Yeah, I'm saying there's a few versions that I like. A few versions I like. Um, so I should have been more specific, and I apologize. But have the original Playmate 4 turtles and most of the Wave 1 and 2 characters. Nice. Yeah, I had all the originals. I had Mikey and Leo in soft head, and then I had the other two with the hard plastic head. Um, I had a bunch of other figures though. I had just a bunch, like a big bin full of them, and you know that was that. I got rid of them when I was in high school. Sold them off at a yard sale while they were still popular, and made a relatively small killing and bought some drum stuff with them. And I regret that. That was the last bit of toys that I had, and I made that choice, and I should never have done it. Everybody says I bought the first Nickelodeon Playmate set, nice sculpts, but I'm good after that. Fair enough. Johnny says, "Shell Brothers Unite." Indeed, indeed. Ian says, when I decided to get back into collecting, I drew up a top 10 Star Wars figures I wanted, having no clue at the time regarding rarity. Trust me, to list four of the last four 17 figures in that 10. Eesh, that's crazy. Did I have any of the play sets? No, I did not. I had a custom turtle van that I made out of a 70s Tonka ambulance. My dad and I repainted it and built up like the guns and stuff like that. We were more into that, but the play sets were kind of hard to come by and or expensive or whatever. I didn't have a lot of interest in that. I just liked having the figures, but no, I didn't have any of the play sets at the time. Lover says LJ's D&D Tiamat. Yeah, yeah. Um, I wouldn't mind having an LJ and D&D Tiamat. Oh, I think they should redo it. I think someone should like iterate on it, make it a more viable figure, not just a statue. Because I've seen a few statues of it, which are beautiful. But that's just a cool character, um, and underutilized figure wise. Like I've seen a few of them on eBay. I'm like, oh, like there's a responsive. Like for me, like a big Grail piece now is the dragon from uh not Brave Star. Where is Brave Star? No, no, no. The hell, John Black Star, Black Star, not Brave Star, Black Star. We just talked about this a few weeks ago. What's wrong with me? Yeah, that dragon is. I had him as a kid, loved him to death. And Michael keeps telling me every time I bring it up. Yes, the Warlock Dragon, Bjorn. And every time I bring it up, Michael always is like, "Dude, it's really fragile." I'm like, "I know, I don't care. I want the dragon." He's like, "All right, dude, fine." Mr. Jim Largo, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Good to see you. Jim Salzberg said, ironically, the KO Joes like Sergeant Rock from Rimco are valuable. No, yeah, the knockoffs, or yeah, same thing with like the knockoffs for He-Man and stuff like that. Like those are crazy. Daniel Dorian says, I've considered going down the LG and D&D rabbit hole, but the price of Tiamat and the Fortress of Fangs makes me think otherwise. Fair enough. Warlock Dragon. Boom, 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 boom. His boy Elroy. Absolutely. Chicken Man says, I remember seeing the D&D figures when I was a kid, not getting them because they weren't in the cartoon. Yep, that was a big part of it for me too. Nerd Raid says, my current Grail is a fully working Maskatron from $6 million Man line. Yeah, that's a rough one to get. Um, cool figure, cool concept, but hard to come across, hard to do the thing. So I wish you luck on that because that's a little crazy, cray cray. Um, It's cool stuff, and we're seeing this wide range of things that people are like, I want this, I want that, I want this, and there's very little through line with what everyone's saying. So I think we've succinctly answered the question: can any toy be a Grail? Clearly, the answer is yes, which means that the very first comment in the chat was um, from Kieran Ball, who's like, yes. Next question. Yeah, he's right. But I wanted to kind of have a discussion about it because I think it's an interesting thing to kind of put out there and see where people's heads are at as far as what they're really after. Um, I don't know. Like aside from that dragon, there's a few things that are like, oh, that'd be really cool. But um, I would say the Warlock Dragon from Black Star is one of those things that I'm like, I would love to have that. I'm scared to death to have it shipped anywhere. That thing will shatter if you're not careful. Um, dun, 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 dun. Your blogger says, with all the reboots, we need an updated Man toy line and show. I'd say at the very least, toys. I don't know what we need a new show. I don't know that there's a way to do that show justice because $6 million, it basically gets you like a toe in today's day and age. Wolfie762, hey, Mr. Jim, hey guys, hello, Mr. Wolfie. Good to see you. Good to see you. Bjorn Jorgen says, if I ever find that dragon for a good price, I'll hand deliver it. Deal, deal. Like I'm not gonna say no about that. Get that thing because it's one thing to just get one that's not broken, right? But then there's like um the oh, what's the thing called? Saddle, which is always missing, which is fine. James Salzberg says the rights for Bionic Man are in contention, so will likely stay away. Of course, of course. So you've got an original Kenner, Steve Austin, a decade ago. What your wife got you, you still have that, and Oscar Goldman and Jamie Summers. Wow. So you're coming close to that completion thing. Pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Then of course I guess there are toys that they're not expensive necessarily, or they're not super expensive. They're not necessarily hard to find, and they're desirable to some people, but we don't always pull the trigger. Do you guys have stuff that you pass over a lot, even though you don't have to? You just kind of pass over it for no apparent reason. You can't explain why. Kind of like the anti-grail in a sense. ESV says Grails are personal. My personal favorite was vintage Star Wars figure was Return of the Jedi Knight Luke. Not a rare figure by any means, but just my favorite character and his best outfit from his favorite Star Wars movie. Absolutely, 100%. Um, Chicken Man's collecting is now incredibly narrow. Only a couple of vintage lines of Marvel Legends if I like the character. You can get carried away. Oh, if I see a bargain, I'm having it. Yeah, that's something I'm struggling with now where it's like you can absolutely get carried away with this stuff for sure. And you got to look at things and say like, do I really want this? Um, and I've canceled a couple things over the last couple weeks, like some pre-orders, and there's probably more cancellations coming. Where it's like, I don't need this. Uh, I got a huge pile of loot coming. A bunch of stuff came in at once. So like the No Way Home Marvel Legends stuff came in, and um, Sue Richards, Sue Storm, Sue Richards, Sue Storm, depending on who you talk to. Invisible Woman came in, and a bunch of Motu stuff, and I'm getting all of it coming, and I'm just like, oh. Um, all of it I want for the most part, with the exception of like two or three of the outlying figures in the wave for Spider-Man No Way Home. Like I wasn't really like I'm not super into them, but they're cool figures. So I was like, whatever. Relative to the fact that I'm paying essentially $15 more than I would pay individually for the figures that I did want, and I do get to build a figure which I actually want. But that's how they get you, right? But there's things I'm looking at in my pre-order list. I'm like, why did I do that? And yeah, you can cancel stuff for store credit and stuff like that. Or if you haven't paid for it yet, you can just cancel it and it's no big deal. Like it's not like uh, a problem necessarily. But I'm just trying to kind of navigate those waters as best I can. Jim Largo says, I went ahead and dipped my toes in the Masterverse line. Let you know what you think about it when they arrive. I think you'll like them. I think you'll like them. They're a nice answer to the classics line. Um, I think they're right up your alley, honestly. I really do. Wolfie says anti-Grail. After a set of those ridiculous fright features, Ghostbusters was too young to get the regular versions of the guys with packs. So they were my first Ghostbuster figures. Have first wave now. My parents wouldn't like either they couldn't find them or we just or whatever. I didn't have a chance to get the original Ghostbusters. I was a fan right away. But I ended up also with the fright feature ones because that was just what we could get. Had the Ecto one, which was cool. I never liked I always felt like the Fright Features ones just looked ridiculous. Um, they weren't even wearing the right costumes. They didn't have packs. I was like, "What is this? These aren't really Ghostbusters. These are lame." But I don't have no desire to get them again, but I had them. Bum, 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 bum. When did I start collecting vintage toys? Um, 4.5 months ago. It's a fact. 4.5 months ago. Um, got a hair up my butt during Iconicon and started collecting. And so, in terms of vintage, I have Superpowers Collection Series 1 and 2 complete. I have a handful of G.I. Joe figures. I have a handful of Mego stuff. All of those were kindly donated to myself from various folks, including Jesse Hughes and Jim Salzberg and a few others like Bjorn and stuff like that. Certainly Nerd Rage, a couple other people. But in terms of vintage stuff, but I also collect modern stuff as well, and it's something where because I'm more or less caught up with Origins, I'm cherry picking Marvel Legends. Um, I'm trying to decide how I want to go through things and what my next kind of conquest is, so to speak. Ask what Mego I collect. Well, I don't. That's the thing. I don't go out of my way to collect Mego. The one that I wanted the most was the Mego Spider-Man, and I have one. I have his original costume, and I have a second original costume as well. Got some other Mego figures. It's just I happen to have. I'm very happy with them, like Captain America. But I don't. It's not something that I'm not seeking like a complete collection or anything. I wouldn't say no to to an Iron Man. I come across an Iron Man at a good price. That'd be kind of cool. Um, but I'm currently not seeking them out. I might change my tune once I can display everything. Might go, those guys look a little lonely, and I'll probably stick to just the Marvel stuff. So if someone's put a gun to my head, said you have to collect Mega, what would you get? It would probably be the old school Marvel stuff or the reissues of the Marvel stuff, and certainly um, the Star Trek Mego stuff is really cool. Like I have a Playmates Picard that Nerd Rage got for me, which I love. Um, but the newer Mego Star Wars stuff is very cool to me. Um, Build a figures are a pain. Yeah, yeah. I can't. They're a pain, man. I got really lucky when when I got one of the really cool build a figures. Um, Sal had sent me along a bunch of Marvel Legends stuff, and he included one of the build a figures I would never have pieced together, which was really cool. I don't know why they don't just sell those. I know why they don't, but I wish they would just sell them. Your anti Grail is probably Snake Mountain. Same, actually. It's one of them. 'Cause I love it, but I know that as soon as I get one and as soon as I piece it together, one, I'm going to say, Jesus, this is lame. And two, they'll announce the Origins one, and then I won't care. So it's weird. It's very weird. Um, Wolfie762 says, I really think that they made an assload of those fright features, underestimated the first wave. I agree with that. Did get the slimed heroes, was happy to see those as a kid because they have proton packs. There you go. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with cherry picking any line. Go after them. Do it. Have fun. Um, I wish that I wasn't so gung ho about them, to be honest, but I am. I want them. I want to be able to just go, behold my origins collection. Like that is just something. But I have no interest in the Masterverse. I have no interest in collecting the vintage equivalent, except for a couple of vehicles, like we've talked about. Um, I want to have this one line. I'm really into it. Oh, we already said that. Jim Salzberg says classified TV toys has good repro of vintage Migos, but the bodies are crap. There you go. Dana Dorian says the route I'm going to end up having 90% of my collection in storage once you're in the new flat. Yeah, I mean that's more or less where I'm at now. Because even though they're here, they're in bins, storage bins. And then I have a fair amount of them in storage. That's just because we're in such a small place. Um, but when we do finally get out into another place, um, Godzilla willing, we're going to have the right size place, and which means two bedrooms or bigger. And that second bedroom is going to be my workspace for my actual job, you know, office studio space for this, and toy display. That's all it exists for. CDs and movies are going to go in a living room, and some specific toys will go out there, like the two Masterverse toys we have, and some other cool things. But my plan is that the whole back wall behind me in that place will be toys, and then somewhere where you wouldn't be able to see it on camera, all my video game stuff. Uh, it's important to me to have that stuff out. You know what I mean? Very important to me. So I get where you're coming from. I want to avoid that as much as I can because I've had 80 to 90% of everything I own in storage for 2 years now. Um, because a temporary situation turned into a semi-permanent situation. I just haven't had the opportunity, the right opportunity, to get out, which is a pain, man. It's a real pain, but I get it. Bjorn Jorgensen says, I have no connection to Motu really and don't know much about it, so I can cherry pick the line. There you go. Um, there's certainly stuff to be had there. But if you have interest in what's there and you create your own connection to it, right? But I do feel like the Origins line is an interesting line between nostalgia for old collectors with capturing the hearts and minds of younger people that weren't there for when it came around. We're going, this is pretty cool, man. Because there were a lot of characters that came out in that line that they never really explained. They're just like, here's this person, they do this. Isn't that cool? And that's all they would do, which is kind of crazy. And sometimes the obscure stuff is what resonates, like a Mosquitor, which was a super rare figure in the original line for the longest time, and now he's relatively new, or well, not new, but he's early in the line now and relatively easy to get. In fact, he's in my pile of loot that's on the way, which is pretty cool to finally have that figure. And he's a good looking. It's a good looking boy. That's what he is. Yes. But what's coming is I got two more of the Kingdom Core figures from Transformers to augment what Gotatron sent. So I'm getting Soundwave and Starscream. So now I have Optimus Prime, Soundwave, Starscream, and Megatron. Wave 6 from Motu Origins, so Stinkor, Lords of Power, Beastman, Webstore, and the Green Goddess. The Mosquitor from Motu Origins, and then the rest of these are Marvel Legends stuff. So I got Sandman coming, Invisible Woman, and then like the two different suit variants from Far From Home for Spider-Man, a Miles Morales, Jonah Jameson from the movie, so a J.K. Simmons, Doctor Strange, um, Morlock, I forget his fucking name, and then Shriek, and then you get Armadillo as the Build-A-Figure with it. So, no worries, James. We'll see you soon, brother. We'll see you soon. Um, Not to mention, Daniel Lawrence says, not to mention all my retro gaming should probably have all my consoles hooked up to a Square TV and all the games in boxes. There you go. Yeah, I've got a pretty big retro gaming collection myself, and it is something where I really do need to decide how I want to go about it. Um, I would like to have them on display and have the ability to hook them up quickly, but I don't know what form that's going to take, to be honest. I don't know if I want them in the living room or what. I think I'm gonna have them all hooked up in the living room so I can just play them whenever I want and just stick with emulation for streams and stuff like that if I decide to do it. But who knows? Who knows? In any case, folks, we're at well over an hour. I just wanted to have a quick stream, pose a question to you guys, hang out, have a good time. I feel we've accomplished that. I appreciate you. I want you all to go over to Two Cents Toys Lego stream. Let him know that you love him. I'm going to go ahead and post the link in chat now so that you can go right to where he's at and hang out with him. Tell him the Grindhead sent you. I love you guys. We'll see you Monday. Well, tomorrow for the regularly scheduled show. I love you. We'll see you then. Cheers.